When I elect to do a Dharma sharing, what comes up for me is that I'm excited about it. And then when I get into the minutia, I get pretty concerned about the timing. And it's very funny because my husband tells me that whenever I speak, regardless of where it is or something, I'm always really concerned about the timing. So I have developed this song. Some of you may have heard me sing it, but it's perfect timing, perfect order, perfect timing, perfect order, perfect timing, perfect order, perfect timing, perfect order. And if you heard the Burger King jingle, I'll tell you that actually was in 1966 when I graduated from high school. That was a very popular jingle back in 1966. I was thinking that Andrew Harvey is very hyperbolic with this drama. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. And I think there's something almost freeing about him. It's almost like I can take my body and stretch when I think about him because he just goes all out. And where he goes all out with somewhat of the sacredness and the profoundness of life, I'm probably the one that goes all out in terms of the silliness in life. And so there will be some of that interspersed within my talk, or maybe after my talk, because I do believe that silliness is sacred. I have a song, and it's Everything is Holy Now by Peter Mayer, and it is one of my absolute favorites. And I am honored and privileged to be able to share it with you, and I hope that you will enjoy it and love it as much as I do. And if Heather, you'll put your thumbs up if you can hear it when I start playing. I know it's there.
When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. But now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at home. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips, but now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now.
Uh-oh. Hold on, I think something else is on my computer. Okay. I love that. I love that song, and I love that it's not in the language that we use in Sangha necessarily. It's not in Buddha's language, but there are lyrics to a song that I love, and that is that love in any language, spoken from the heart, brings us all together and never apart. And so anytime that we sing of love and joy and peace, it's a universal language. And I think song is that universal language. We're talking today from the heart of Buddhist teachings, and Thay starts out with a very poignant poem, and I'm only going to read the first verse of this poem. My youth, an unripe plum, your teeth have left their marks on it. The tooth marks still vibrate. I remember always. Remember always. Most of us have that plum in our lives somewhere. And those marks, the hurts, the pains, the joys, the sorrows are all written there. And we encounter them. And that's one of the reasons that Buddhism offers us so much healing, because it's predicated on the fact that we have all encountered this suffering. Now, probably different parts of the plum were bitten hard and some of the parts were just barely grazed, but none of us have escaped the human condition. And that's not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, Thay tells us that if you don't suffer, you're not going to be able to learn. You're not going to be able to grow. Thay says that the Buddha was not a god. He was a human being. And the reason that he said he was human was because he wanted us to be able to identify with Buddha, because it's so easy. When we think about something of enlightenment, we tend to think of it as something that may happen in the future if we work really hard. And it may happen to somebody else that's a master or somebody that's ascended or somebody that's great. But Thay says, no. He says the Buddha was a human just like us. And he said, and I too was a human. And he shares about his experience during the war. Here's a quote from him. I was deeply touched when I read this, because I guess there's always a part of me that holds out that there'll be a time when I'm not brokenhearted about something. It's not that I don't want to be brokenhearted, but there's this kind of thing like I'm going to get to this place where it's always thrills and chills and wonder and mystery. And as much as I know about suffering and the place that it plays in my life, there's a part of me that wants to avoid it. So the quote from Thay is, I grew up in a time of war. There was destruction all around, children, adults, values, and a whole country. As a young person, I suffered a lot. Once the door of awareness has been opened, you cannot close it. The wounds of war in me are still not healed. There are nights I lie awake and embrace my people, my country, and the whole planet with my mindful breathing. This was written many years ago, and we know that Thay passed away, I guess a year ago, maybe it was longer than that. But when I think of this, I think about that many of us, including myself, we may have been lying awake, breathing in the middle of the night because of how we were suffering. And so the saints suffered, we suffer, we're all alike. We're in it together. Think about a sheet. Think about a king size sheet. And if you had somebody on each end of it, and it was all spread out, and you pull, and somebody on one end just pulls on it, what will happen? The whole sheet is going to move in some way. And that's the way we are. As humanity, we are the warp and weave of that fabric. And whenever anything happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. There's a saying it's an ancient saying in the Upanishads, and that is, when a blade of grass is cut, the universe quivers. This inner being, it doesn't stop with humanity. It doesn't stop with the planet. It doesn't stop with the universe. It's an infinite experience and state of consciousness where there is one only. When I was much younger, I wore a lot of different masks. I don't know that I did it to hide so much, or maybe I did, but I did it because I thought that's what I was expected. I thought I was expected to be a certain way. I thought I was expected to be brilliant. I thought I was expected to be positive. That was really a big thing. I thought that I was expected to have it all together. I wore many masks, and I wore the mask of those, what I thought others would want from me. I remember one time I was in a meditation hall and I was meditating, and it was a tiny switch, but it was a switch from what others are thinking of me. I mean, I'm really thinking, what are other people, if I'm wiggling around, what are they thinking? That I'm not meditating, that I'm not being still, that I'm not doing the right thing. And all of a sudden, in the deep peace, in the silence of the presence, there was awareness in me that, well, what would it be like if I was aware of what they were doing? Would I be judgmental? Would I be upset? How would I be? But it was just a shift, but it was almost like I'm here and I should be aware of what's there, not try to be there in somebody else's body, trying to be aware of what's here. Because I can't, I'm totally not present. I'm vacant if I'm in someone else's head, trying to please them, trying to figure out what they want, try to figure out how to be around them. I'm just not present. So that was a wonderful switch for me. And that's one of the things of engaged Buddhism. It constantly says, get back here. not in, you know, any kind of mean way or anything. It's like you're not anywhere if you're not here. You may think you're somewhere. That's an illusion. It may be entertaining, but come back here. And it offers that invitation in every instant, in every second on the clock, and in the eternal now. It's like, come back, come back, come back. I had my Buddha moment once, we've had many Buddha moments, but this was when I was participating in a vision quest. And I went out and was in the mountains by myself. It was very cold. It even sleeted one time, and out there fending myself against the weather. And I just decided, like Buddha, that I was not going to continue on the way that I was the way that life was going. I was demanding a lot from life. I was recently out of a bad relationship, or not bad relationship, a relationship. My fiance left me. So I was just in tears, and I went to this vision quest. I went on the mountain, I'm by myself, and I out loud mouthed every despair in my life, everything that had ever hurt me, everything in this relationship that was painful for me, my anger. I yelled and I screamed and I talked, and I was out there for 3 days and this by myself. So I had plenty of time to do all these things. And finally, I was totally exhausted. And so I lay down. It was interesting at the time, there was a full moon. This was during the day. So I lie down and I covered myself with dirt and rocks. And I said, well, I'm going to die. I'm dying to the past. I'm dying to everything. And I will not get up until I feel like I am ready to fully live, because I know I have not been fully living. So I was there for hours. And then, without any forethought, I just said, I'm going to live. And I opened my eyes, and it had been cloudy and overcast. But right in the moment that I opened my eyes and I made that decision to live, the sun came out and it shone on me. And I rised up and the rocks fell off. And I was out in the mountains for 10 days, and there was hauling water. There were a lot of difficulties, but there's something that Buddha wanted to tell us. And Buddha said, you don't have to go to those kinds of extremes in order to experience enlightenment. Because if you just sit down right where you are and you plumb the depths of your heart and you look at suffering, I look at suffering, then we will meet the present. We will meet the Buddha within. The ocean of suffering is immense, but when we turn around, we can see the land. And that reminds me, that's what the Buddha said, but that reminds me of my easiosophy sayings. Some of you have heard my easiosophy philosophy, and it's about really ending and eliminating ego-driven struggle and suffering. I don't think in the time of Buddha, which would have been 500 years BC, I don't know that they had the ego struggle and suffering that we have, because they didn't get to be upset if a restaurant was closed when they went there, or they weren't upset because they didn't have the right color shoes to match an outfit. They didn't have these things that we suffer about today. And so I call those things ego-driven suffering, strain and stress. And so in terms of my saying, and that is, and I agree with Buddha, because I think he would say life is hard, but it's not hard all the time. So we can agree that life is hard, but it is not hard all the time. And it's important to make that distinction, because how can we really awaken if we believe that it's hard all the time? If we believe that life is only suffering, if we're not willing to turn around from the ocean of suffering and look at the shore, or we don't even believe that the shore exists, then we will suffer. I want you to go, I'm going to take you through a little guided meditation somewhat, and or visualization. So if you would just find a comfortable place to be, and I do recommend that you close your eyes and imagine that you're a bird. And you're in a tree, you've got your little feet planted on the tree. And you've been following the same person for years. You've been following Siddhartha Gautama. And even though you're a bird, there's something in you that longs for more. And you found that within this young man, there was a spark. And you were drawn to this spark. And so you followed him year after year. You watched him study and practice meditation for many years, 6 years. But today, as you look down from your tree, you see Siddhartha standing up, walking away from the people that he had been studying with and the 5 ascetics that he had been meditating with. And he just began to walk. And he looks up at you and he says, "Hey, you, come with me." Now, you didn't even realize that he knew you were there, but he did. And so as he walked out of town, you flew from tree to tree, and you see him going and sitting down at a tree, and you fly over to the tree. This is kind of exciting. You're with him all alone, and he knows that you're here. It's wonderful. And you hear him speak, and he says, "I will not get up until I'm enlightened." And you pay attention. You say, "Oh, this is big stuff. Wow." And so you sit all the way through the evening. You can feel the strength of the tree, the earth that supports it, the air that you breathe. And the sun rises. You see it coming over the horizon in beautiful colors, just streaking the sky. And you can feel something's different. There's more peace. You're completely relaxed. That thing you thought was missing is not missing anymore. You know for sure that Siddhartha is free. You drink it in. You see it in his face. He's peaceful. He's content, as are you. You drink it in, this energy that's emanating from him. And you sit with him in the tree for 49 sunrises and 49 sunsets. You watch Siddhartha enjoy his realization that this peace and the beauty emanating from his face. There's a completion. His search is over. There is infinite peace. Ah, Siddhartha's getting up, you see. He walks down the road, and so you follow him. He walks into the deer park in Sarnath. He wants to share his understanding with the 5 ascetics with whom he had earlier practiced. You see him walking in the building, in the village, and the 5 men are sitting down meditating, but they hear his footsteps and they look up. They start feeling a little bit concerned or uneasy because to them, Siddhartha had abandoned them. But they look at him. You can see them looking at him, and they can see that something is different. He's radiant. They offer him something to drink and they wash his feet, and you see that. And then you hear Siddhartha say, "Dear friends, I have seen deeply that nothing can be by itself alone, that everything has to interbe with everything else. I have seen that all beings are endowed with the nature of awakening. I can say more if you would like me to, but he could tell that the men were not open to this. And you hear him say, because he's become the Buddha now, the enlightened one, have I ever lied to you? You can see that the men relax now. And then they begin to listen to the Buddha. And you, along with them, hear for the first time the Four Noble Truths, the existence of suffering, the making of suffering, the possibility of restoring well-being, and the eightfold path that leads to well-being. You could tell that one of the aesthetics, Khandana, understands, and Buddha says, he looks up, and the Buddha saw it too and said, Khandana understands. And from then on, he was known as the one who understands. And then you hear Buddha speak again. Dear friends, with humans, gods, Romans, monastics, Maras, as my witnesses, I tell you that if I had not experienced directly all that I have told you, I would not proclaim that I'm an enlightened person free from suffering. Because I myself have identified suffering, understood suffering, identified with the causes of suffering, and removed the cause of suffering, confirmed the existence of well-being, obtained well-being, identified the path of well-being, gone to the end of the path, and realized total liberation. I now proclaim to you that I am a free person. And the earth shakes. You feel it, your little tree that you're in is shaking, and you're shaking, and you can hear whispers in the cosmos. The voices of the gods and the humans, they're saying, an enlightened person has been born and has put into motion the will of Dharma, the way of understanding and love. And now, just bring yourself back into the room. Knowing that we are never metaphorically in the presence of the Buddha. We are always in the presence of the Buddha. For real. It's a reality, the Buddha presence. The Buddha wanted to emphasize three things to the ascetics. He wanted them to know the middle way, the austerities. He had spent 6 years performing austerities, and he knew it wasn't the only way. And he wanted them to know this. He wanted to bring the good news to these people who had been waiting and hoping and wishing like he had for 6 years. He wanted to know that there was a more immediate path, and it didn't involve pain, not physical pain. He wanted them to know the Four Noble Truths, and he wanted them to engage in the world. Let me show this, bring this chart up. And so if you looked at the book, you'll see this chart, which is pretty cool. And it shows, if you see that there's 4 sections, and those are the Four Noble Truths: suffering, creating suffering, the cessation of creating suffering, and then the Eightfold Path. It's just a neat visual. So I have silliness here. I have quite a bit of silliness, and I hope you can deal with this. I only wrote these lyrics late this afternoon to 2 songs, and they're very short. And I practiced them, and about 1 out of 25 times I got it right. So I'm not going for perfection, but I'm going to sing these 2 for our entertainment. The Four Noble Truths have set us free and transformed suffering. Right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right speech, right action, brought enlightenment. I didn't get it exactly right, but I think it was close enough. My husband said that he said that even if I didn't get the tune right on the first, it was 1 out of 25. So what can we expect? Okay. So anyway, this was one of the off times. I've given 24 more tries, I'll get it. And so the next one is, I hope you won't think it's iconoclastic. I think it's fun to make fun of ourselves and everything, or have fun with. I know you are a beautiful Buddha, and you must have been a beautiful child when you were young and frightened before you were enlightened. I know you drove those ascetics wild. Now you are a beautiful Buddha, and all your Sangha members can smile. And so now we will go to Dharma sharing. And for Dharma sharing, we're going to divide into groups. And there will be, we're going to divide into just have 2 people in the group, and each one of you will get 5 minutes to share. You can go back and forth and share for the 10 minutes. And as you do your Dharma sharing, then what we want to do is really share from the heart. We want to share not information, but more our experience than information. And we have the questions. Let's see, let me bring those up. I did send the questions. I actually kind of goofed because I got one word wrong, but here are the discussion questions. And the questions are, Buddha told us not to wait until you were suffering, when you're not suffering, to allow yourself to be happy. So what does this mean to you? Have you done this in the past? Like, there's been some times where things are really bad, but you allowed yourself not to suffer 24/7. How did you do that? How did you get through the rough times? How did you engage in joy when your world was falling apart? Or how do you do that? You don't have to remember all of this, but just gets the essence of the questions. And the next question says, Thay says, without suffering, you cannot grow. You cannot get the peace you deserve. Do you agree with this? Do you have to suffer to be happy? Positive thinking is now embedded in our culture. Do Thay's teachings, do the Buddhist teachings conflict? Whoops, can't see the, whoops. I can't see the bottom of this because I've got it, my screen thing. Let me see, maybe I can move it. Nope. But anyway, does the Buddhist teachings conflict with the idea of positive thinking? And so you can answer any of all of these. Maybe you just want to react on how you listen to the teachings that we had in this first 3 chapters, whatever you want to do. Heather will divide us up into groups, and then you don't have to do anything, I don't think, to come back. I think you'll just automatically be brought back into the room where we'll share collectively.
Thank you, Anne. I will send people into the groups, but I would like